Ceres stood at the edge of the balcony, her long purple robes moving softly in the wind. Below her, the capital city of Zirka shined with lights and floating towers. The skies above were filled with ships, their engines glowing blue. Ceres was a noblewoman of the Zirk Empire, one of the largest empires in the galaxy. Her people were tall, strong, and proud. They ruled many worlds, and most other species feared them. But Ceres felt different from the rest. She had trained in politics, science, and war as expected of a noble. She knew how to command fleets and speak before large crowds. Yet inside, she felt unsure. The other nobles were louder, more confident. They called her soft, quiet, and even weak, though never to her face. Today was one of the most important events of the year, a royal gathering of the Great Council. Leaders from every Zirk colony had come to the palace. Ceres walked into the large hall, her head high, though her heart was heavy. Inside, the nobles talked loudly and laughed. Ceres moved through the crowd, listening. Then she stopped near. "A group of high-ranking officers. The humans are spreading fast," one of them said. "Small but clever, dangerous if left alone." "Pfft," another scoffed. "They are tiny, weak. Their world barely left its star system. Let them bark." "No," said a voice Ceres recognized. It was Lord Vikar, a respected general. "I've seen their battles. They fight with heart. They never give up, even when they lose. That's what makes them a threat." Ceres frowned. She had heard about Earth before, but only a little. A planet with oceans, mountains, and many different people. The humans were small compared to the Zirk, only half their size, but they were spreading fast across space. A new idea formed in her mind. "What if I went there?" she said out loud, surprising even herself. The group turned to look at her. Lord Vikar raised an eyebrow. "You, Lady Ceres? You want to go to Earth?" "I do," she said, standing straighter. "Let me lead a peaceful mission. I want to learn more about them. Maybe we don't need to fight them. Maybe we can work together." There was silence, then laughter. "Earth may be small, Lady Ceres," one noble said, smiling coldly, "but it may still be too big for you." Ceres felt her face burn, but she did not step back. "Maybe it is," she said, "but I'll try." That night, Ceres stood in her private chamber, looking up at the stars. She had already sent a request to the High Command. She knew they might reject it, but she had to try. Her heart was set. The next morning, a message arrived, permission granted. She was to leave in 3 days. Ceres prepared quickly. She read everything she could about humans, how they lived, what they believed, and how they fought. She learned about their languages, their music, and their long history of both peace and war. As the day of departure came closer, her nerves grew stronger. She was going to a world where she would be seen as a giant, a stranger, maybe even a monster. Still, something in her heart told her this was the right path. Her ship, the Silver Flame, stood ready at the launch port. Ceres stepped aboard, her mind racing. Behind her, the Zirk Empire continued to shine, but ahead of her lay something new, something unknown. She took a deep breath. "Too big or not," she whispered. "I will try." The ship lifted off, and the stars welcomed her. The next day, Ceres found herself standing before a long table in a large meeting room. The walls were lined with strange symbols and bright screens that flashed images of Earth's cities and landscapes. Around the table sat several important human leaders, each looking at her with curiosity and caution. Ceres knew this was her chance to prove herself, to show that she was more than just a giant from another world. Liam stood beside her, a calming presence in the midst of her nervousness. He had explained that the human leaders were skeptical about her mission. They had heard of the Zirk Empire and its reputation, but they knew little about her. Most humans feared the Zirk, seeing them as powerful invaders, not peaceful allies. "Lady, Ceres, please," a tall woman with dark hair said, her voice stern. "Tell us why we should trust you. Your people have a history of conquering weaker species. What makes you different?" Ceres took a deep breath, trying to steady her thoughts. She had practiced this speech many times, but now that she was here, facing the human leaders, the words seemed harder to find. "I understand your concerns," Ceres began. Her voice was steady, though a bit softer than she had intended. "I know my people have a reputation for strength and power, but I am not here to conquer or control. I am here to learn. I want to understand humans, and I want to find a way for us to work together." The room was quiet. The leaders exchanged looks, their eyes filled with doubt. Ceres could feel their distrust weighing on her, but she didn't back down. "I've seen how humans work together. I've heard about your wars, your struggles, and how you always rebuild. You don't just fight for power or territory. You fight for your beliefs, for each other. I want to understand that strength." The woman with dark hair spoke again, her voice softer this time. "You speak of strength, Lady Ceres, but do you truly understand what it means to be human? We are fragile. We are small. Every day we face dangers that threaten to destroy us, and yet we fight on, together. Can you truly grasp that?" Ceres felt the weight of the question. She had never thought about humans this way before. She had always seen them as small, vulnerable creatures. But now, standing in front of these leaders, she saw something else. A strength that didn't rely on size or power. It was a strength of spirit, a strength that came from within. "I don't know if I fully understand," Ceres admitted. "But I want to. I want to learn how humans find strength in their weakness, how you survive, how you fight for each other, even when everything seems against you." The room was silent again. The leaders exchanged more glances, and Ceres could feel their skepticism. They were still unsure of her, still uncertain if she was truly different from the rest of her people. Liam stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "I've spent time with Lady Ceres. I've seen how she cares for those around her, how she listens and learns. She may be from a powerful species, but her heart is open. I believe she wants peace, not war." The woman with dark hair looked at Liam for a long moment, then turned her gaze back to Ceres. "Very well. We will give you a chance, but this is just the beginning. You will have to prove that you are different, that your people can be trusted." Ceres nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. But she knew this was just the first test. The real challenge would come later. She would have to prove that her words weren't just empty promises. She would have to show that humans could trust her, that she truly understood what it meant to be human. As the meeting ended, the leaders slowly left the room, still whispering among themselves. Ceres stayed behind for a moment, letting the weight of the meeting sink in. She had won their attention, but that was only the beginning. Now she had to show them that she was worthy of their trust. Liam smiled at her as she walked toward him. "You did well, Ceres. They're not easy to convince, but you've made a start." Ceres nodded, but her thoughts were already focused on the next step. She had a long way to go. The humans had given her a chance, but she couldn't waste it. She had to learn more, understand more, and prove that her people were not the enemies they thought her to be. She walked out of the room, her mind set on the challenges ahead. But this time, she felt a little less alone. She wasn't just an alien giant on a strange world. She was someone who was trying to understand, trying to grow, and that in itself was a kind of strength. Ceres spent the following days getting to know the people of Earth better. Her schedule was full, with meetings, discussions, and visits to various human institutions. Every day, she felt more out of place. The small cities, the narrow streets, and the crowds of people. Everything felt overwhelming to her. She was a giant compared to them, and it made her feel like an outsider. Still, she continued to try, forcing herself to stay open and learn. One afternoon, Liam invited her to visit a nearby park. It was a quiet place, full of tall trees and blooming flowers. The air was fresh, and the peaceful sounds of birds and wind calmed Ceres. As they walked through the park, Liam explained that it was one of the few spots in the city where people could escape the busy life and find a moment of peace. Ceres looked around, admiring the beauty of the place, but as she took another step, she accidentally stepped too hard, and a small flower crushed beneath her foot. She froze, her face reddening with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, looking down at the crushed flower. "I didn't mean to." Liam smiled gently, shaking his head. "It's okay, Ceres. You're not used to this, but the important thing is that you're trying." They continued walking, and as they reached a small pond, Liam pointed to a group of people gathered by the water. They were preparing for a canoe race. Ceres watched them with interest, amazed at how small the boats were compared to the size of the humans. The people in the boats looked so focused and determined, despite the clear size difference between them and the water. "This is a tradition," Liam explained. "It's a race that's been held for years, and everyone gets involved. It's not about winning. It's about the effort, the teamwork, and the spirit of never giving up." Ceres watched as the race began. The boat started to move slowly, then faster as the paddlers worked together, their movements synchronized. It was clear that they had trained for this moment. But halfway through the race, one of the boats started to tip. The paddlers struggled to keep it steady, but the boat capsized, spilling the people into the water. For a moment it seemed like the race was over, but the paddlers didn't give up. They swam to the shore, helping each other out of the water, instead of leaving the race. They quickly returned to their boat, fixing it as best as they could. Even though they were soaked and tired, they continued to paddle, and in the end, they crossed the finish line together, cheering for each other. Ceres felt something stir inside her. The sight of the humans working together, even after failing, was a powerful one. They didn't give up. They didn't let a setback stop them. They worked together, supported each other, and kept going until the end. Liam noticed her expression and smiled. "That's what I mean by resilience. Humans don't just fight to win. They fight to keep going, no matter how hard it gets." Ceres stood still for a moment, watching the humans celebrate their race. She had never seen anything like it before. In her own world, strength was measured by power, speed, and victory. But here, on Earth, strength seemed to be measured by the ability to endure, to keep going even when the odds were against you. The human's ability to keep pushing forward, even after failure, was something Ceres had never truly understood before. She'd always relied on her size, her strength, her power. But now she saw that real strength didn't come from towering over others. It came from within, the determination to keep going no matter the challenges. Liam turned to her, his eyes soft. "It's not always about being the strongest, Ceres. It's about heart. It's about the will to push through even when it seems impossible." Ceres nodded, deep in thought. She had always believed that strength was something you could see. But now she was beginning to understand that true strength was something you could feel. It was the spirit that kept going, the heart that didn't give up. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Ceres felt a quiet sense of peace. She still didn't fully understand humans, but she was beginning to see what made them so strong. It wasn't their size, it wasn't their power, it was their resilience, their ability to keep going, to support one another, and to never give up. For the first time since her arrival, Ceres didn't feel like a giant on a strange world. She felt like someone who had the chance to learn something important, something that could change the way she saw herself and the way she saw the humans she was trying so hard to understand. The journey to Earth felt long. Ceres spent most of the time in her ship, the Silver Flame, reading and studying. She looked over her notes about human culture, their history, their wars, and their peace efforts. She learned that despite their small size, humans had a deep sense of unity and strength. Their wars had torn their world apart, but they always managed to rebuild and fight for what they believed in. That, Ceres thought, was something powerful. When the ship finally entered Earth's atmosphere, Ceres gazed out the window at the blue planet below. She could see the oceans, the vast land masses, and the clouds swirling above. It was a beautiful sight, and for a moment she felt both excitement and fear. The Silver Flame descended gently toward a large city on Earth's surface, a place called New York. The city was a bustling, noisy place, unlike the quiet elegance of Jirka. People below looked up, their eyes widening at the sight of the ship descending from the sky. To them, Ceres must have seemed like a giant. When the ship landed, the doors opened slowly, and Ceres stepped down onto the unfamiliar soil of Earth. The air felt different here. It was warmer, with a scent of trees and fresh grass. She stood, tall, looking around. Earth was full of life, but it felt strange to her. The people below were so much smaller than her. Most of them barely reached her waist. A group of humans stood waiting, their faces uncertain. Among them was a man who stood taller than the others. He had short brown hair and a confident, but cautious expression. This was Liam, the human negotiator assigned to assist Ceres in her mission. Liam stepped forward and extended his hand, though it barely reached Ceres's waist. She was reminded of how much larger she was compared to them. He smiled warmly, though his eyes held a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "Welcome to Earth, Lady Ceres," he said, his voice steady. "I'm Liam. I'll be your guide while you're here." Ceres nodded, bending slightly to meet his gaze. "Thank you, Liam," she said in a voice that was both strong and soft. "I am here to learn and perhaps teach if I can." Liam raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. He gestured for her to follow him, and she did. As they walked through the city, Ceres marveled at the buildings that reached for the sky and the people moving through the streets. There were so many of them, humans of all shapes, sizes and colors. They were all different, yet they seemed to work together, walking through the busy streets as if they were one. At first, Ceres felt out of place. Her size made her stick out like a sore thumb. People stopped and stared, some nervous, others amazed. She tried to ignore the looks, but it was hard. She was a giant among these small beings. As they walked, Liam pointed out different landmarks, talking about Earth's history. He mentioned great moments of triumph and tragedy, the wars that had almost destroyed humanity, and the peace they had fought to build after. Ceres was fascinated by how much they had overcome, even though they were so much smaller and weaker than her people. But it wasn't just the size difference that bothered her. The human city was crowded and loud, full of noise and movement. Every step she took felt like it might crush something beneath her. She had to be careful, and that made her feel clumsy. She wasn't used to being cautious. She was used to being in control, to towering over others with ease. "How do you manage this?" Ceres asked Liam, her voice full of wonder. "How do you live in a world so small?" Liam looked up at her and smiled. "We manage by sticking together. No matter how small we are, we always have each other. And when we face challenges, we face them together. That's how we survive." Ceres thought about his words for a moment. She had always relied on her own strength, on the strength of her people, but humans relied on something different, unity. It was a strange idea, but one that seemed to work for them. As they continued walking, Ceres began to see the city differently. It wasn't just a place full of small, fragile creatures. It was a place where strength wasn't measured by size or power, but by something deeper, a strength of will, of heart. She realized then that her mission here was not just to learn about humans, but to learn from them. They had something to teach her, something she hadn't expected. The day ended with a meeting at a human council, where Ceres was to present her initial intentions to the leaders of Earth. She felt nervous, but she was determined. It wasn't about being big. It was about understanding, about showing that she was willing to learn and grow. She wasn't just here to rule or conquer. She was here to find a way for her people to live alongside humans, as equals. She took a deep breath before entering the room, ready to face whatever came next. The days passed quickly, and Ceres found herself growing more comfortable on Earth. She had learned so much about the humans, their culture, and their resilience. Each day, she felt a little less like a giant among them, and a little more like a student in a world that was completely new to her. One morning, Liam came to her with an interesting proposition. "Lady Ceres, I think you should see something," he said with a serious expression. "There's a test of strength happening today. It's a local tradition, and I believe it will show you just how much the humans value determination and teamwork." Ceres was intrigued. She had already seen the humans' ability to endure, but now she was curious about how they viewed strength. She followed Liam to a large arena in the center of the city, where a crowd of humans had gathered to watch. The arena was filled with people, all cheering excitedly. At the center, there was a large obstacle course designed to test both physical strength and mental endurance. Ceres watched in surprise as humans, young and old, stood at the starting line, preparing for the challenge. Some of them were small, others were older and had clearly seen better days, but all of them had a look of determination on their faces. Liam explained the rules. The obstacle course would test their endurance, strength, and teamwork. The goal was not just to finish first, but to finish together as a team. Each group had to work together to overcome the challenges ahead, climbing walls, crossing rivers, and carrying heavy loads. It wasn't about who was the strongest. It was about how they worked together and kept going when things got hard. The first group began. Ceres watched closely. The humans moved quickly, but it was clear that the obstacles were difficult. One woman in particular, smaller than most, struggled to climb a wall. She slipped several times, but each time she got back up and tried again. The crowd cheered her on, and her teammates shouted words of encouragement. Finally, with a great effort, she made it over the wall, and the group continued moving forward. Ceres watched in awe. She had seen strength before, but this was something different. It wasn't just about overcoming physical challenges. It was about the spirit to never give up, no matter how hard things got. Liam noticed her expression. "That's the heart of a human," he said quietly. "We don't always win, but we always try. Even when we fall, we get back up." The course continued, with each group facing different challenges. Some struggled with the physical tasks, but they never stopped. They worked together, offering help when needed and cheering each other on. The race was not about competition, but about the spirit of pushing forward, together. Finally, the last group of competitors took their turn. The crowd was cheering loudly, and Ceres could feel the excitement in the air. But this group was different. They were all older, their faces lined with years of experience. They moved slowly but with steady determination. One of them, an older man with a gray beard, had trouble with the heavy load he was asked to carry. He stumbled, almost falling. Ceres held her breath, waiting for him to give up, but instead, his teammates rushed to his side. They didn't just offer him help, they encouraged him. They lifted the load together, and with a final joint effort, they completed the task. The crowd erupted in applause, and Ceres felt a lump form in her throat. The humans didn't just finish the race, they finished it together. And it wasn't about how fast they had gone or how strong they were. It was about their ability to support each other, to keep going, and to never give up. That's the true strength of humans, Liam said. It's not just in the body, it's in the heart, in the way we help each other. And when we face something difficult, we don't face it alone. Ceres felt a deep sense of respect for the humans. She had come to Earth expecting to teach them something about strength. But now she realized that she had learned something far more important. True strength wasn't measured by size or power. It was measured by the heart, by the willingness to keep going, even when everything seemed impossible. As the day came to a close, Ceres stood quietly, watching the humans celebrate their victory. She had always been proud of the power of her own people, but now, standing among these humans, she understood that there was more to strength than she had ever imagined. She turned to Liam, her expression thoughtful. "You were right," she said softly. "I see now that strength is not just in the body, it's in the spirit, in the way we support each other, in the way we keep moving forward together." Liam smiled. "That's exactly it, Ceres. You've got it." And for the first time, Ceres felt a real connection to the humans. She had learned their lesson, not just about strength, but about what it meant to be truly strong. And she knew that this was only the beginning of her journey on Earth. The sun was setting as Ceres walked back to her temporary residence, a large building provided for her by the human leaders. Her mind was full of thoughts. She had seen many things in her time on Earth, but what stood out to her the most was the way humans treated each other, how they worked together, encouraged each other, and never gave up. It was a lesson she hadn't expected to learn, but now it seemed like the key to understanding humanity. Over the next few days, Ceres continued to immerse herself in Earth's culture. She visited schools, spoke with scientists, and even spent time in local neighborhoods. Everywhere she went, she was met with curiosity but also with wariness. Some humans still saw her as a giant, someone too powerful to trust. And while Ceres had made progress with the leaders, the common people were a different challenge. She knew that trust was not easily earned, especially after the history of her people. Her reputation as a noblewoman from the Zerk Empire still loomed over her. Despite her best efforts, there were always whispers and glances when she passed by. She couldn't change the past, but she was determined to prove that her presence on Earth wasn't a threat. One morning, Ceres was asked to participate in a meeting with Earth's Council to discuss a potential alliance between her people and the humans. This was a significant moment. If she could convince the Council that the Zerk were truly seeking peace, it would mean a new chapter in Earth's future. But Ceres knew that it wouldn't be easy. The council chamber was large, filled with representatives from various Earth nations. The air was thick with tension. There were still many who doubted Ceres's sincerity. As she entered the room, she could feel the eyes on her. They weren't just looking at her. They were sizing her up, wondering if she was trustworthy. Liam stood by her side as she took her place at the table. He had been a steady support for her, always offering advice and words of encouragement. But today, the responsibility was hers. She had to prove that she wasn't just another alien looking to take advantage of Earth. The meeting began with a series of questions, some simple, some pointed. Ceres answered each one as best as she could, explaining her people's desire for peace, their need for new resources, and their belief in cooperation. She spoke about the strength of the Zerk people, not their physical power, but their intellectual and emotional strength. The council listened quietly, but Ceres could feel their skepticism. They had heard similar stories before. She had to show them that this time, things were different. Then came the most difficult part of the meeting, a test of trust. One of the council members, a woman named Ava, stood up and looked directly at Ceres, you say your people want peace, but words alone are not enough. Actions speak louder than words. We cannot afford to let ourselves be fooled again. Ava's words cut deep. Ceres had expected this, but it still stung. She knew that actions were the only way to prove herself, and this was her moment. But how could she show them that she wasn't just another alien with grand promises? Ava, I understand your concerns, Ceres said, standing up to face her. You have every right to question me, to question my people. But I am not here to make promises I cannot keep. I am here to show you that we can work together. Let me prove it. There was a tense silence in the room. Ava raised an eyebrow. And how do you intend to prove it? Ceres took a deep breath. I am willing to take a step that many would consider a risk, a test of trust. If you truly believe that humans and Zerk can live together in peace, then you must trust me. I will leave the safety of my ship and walk among your people. I will spend time in your cities, in your homes, with your families. I will allow you to see who I really am. I will not hide behind walls or barriers. I will be vulnerable, just like you. The council members exchanged looks, murmuring among themselves. It was a bold statement. It was a challenge. And Ceres knew that if she failed, it could ruin everything. But she had to try. Finally, Ava spoke again, her voice thoughtful. This is not a decision we can make lightly. But I see the sincerity in your eyes, Ceres. I will agree to your trial of trust, on one condition. You must go into the city alone. No guards, no soldiers. Just you and the people. Ceres nodded, her heart pounding. This was it. If she could walk through the streets of the city without fear, without being seen as a threat, it would prove that her words were true. It would show that she wasn't just a giant alien from another world. She was someone willing to trust. The council agreed to the trial, and the meeting came to an end. As Ceres walked out of the chamber, she felt a mixture of fear and excitement. This was her chance. But it was also her greatest risk. If the humans couldn't trust her, then all her efforts would be in vain. She turned to Liam, who gave her a reassuring smile. You've got this, Ceres, he said. This is your moment to show them who you really are. Ceres took a deep breath, ready for what lay ahead. The day of the trial had arrived. Ceres stood at the edge of her temporary home, looking out over the bustling city. The people were going about their daily routines, unaware of the test that would soon unfold. Today was the day that would determine whether or not she could gain the trust of Earth's people. It was a risk, one that could either change everything or ruin her chances forever. Liam stood beside her, his face full of concern. Are you sure about this, Ceres? He asked softly. The people might not be ready to trust you. They might still see you as a threat. Ceres nodded, her eyes determined. I have to try, Liam. If I don't show them who I truly am, then I'll never gain their trust. This is the only way. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, leaving the safety of her home behind. There were no guards with her today, no soldiers standing watch. It was just Ceres, alone, walking into the heart of the city. The streets were crowded with humans, some walking quickly, some talking to each other, and others simply enjoying the day. The sounds of the city filled the air, the hum of voices, the distant roar of traffic, the chirp of birds in the trees. To Ceres, the city felt alive with energy, but she also felt the weight of the eyes watching her from every corner. Some people glanced at her in surprise, others stared at her in awe. A few even stepped aside, as if unsure whether to get too close. But Ceres kept walking. She knew that her size would always make her stand out, but that was not what she needed. To prove today, she needed to show the humans that she wasn't a monster, that she wasn't here to conquer or destroy. She needed to show them that she was just like them, someone who wanted peace, someone who could be trusted. As she walked, she saw children playing in the streets, laughing and running around. A small group of them noticed her and stopped, staring up at her in wonder. Ceres paused and knelt down, making herself smaller. "Hello," she said, her voice gentle. "I'm Ceres. What's your name?" One of the children, a girl with bright red hair, smiled shyly. "I'm Emily," she said. "Are you a princess?" Ceres chuckled softly. "Not exactly. I'm a visitor from a faraway place, but I'd like to be your friend." The other children gathered around her, their faces full of curiosity. They asked her questions about her home and her people, and Ceres answered as best as she could, trying to make them understand that she was not a threat. For a moment she felt a sense of connection with them. These children, so innocent and full of wonder, were not afraid of her. They saw her for who she was, not just the size of her body. Their laughter, their trust, filled Ceres with hope. Maybe, just maybe, the humans could learn to see her the same way. But as Ceres stood to continue her walk, she noticed a change in the atmosphere. The air grew tense. A group of adults had gathered nearby, watching her. Their eyes were filled with suspicion. Some were whispering to each other, pointing at her. Ceres could feel the weight of their distrust pressing down on her. One man stepped forward, his face hard. "What do you think you're doing here?" he demanded. "You think just because you come from another planet, you can stroll into our city and act like you belong?" Ceres stood tall, trying not to let the anger in his voice shake her. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," she said calmly. "I just want to understand your world. I want to learn from you, and I want to help if I can." The man didn't seem convinced. "You're just like the rest of them, aren't you? You think you can come here, pretend to be friendly, and then take what you want?" Ceres's heart sank. This was the moment she had feared. This man, this crowd, they saw her as nothing more than a threat, an alien invader. No matter how much she tried to show them that she meant no harm, they couldn't see past her size, her appearance. But then, something unexpected happened. Emily, the little girl who had spoken to her earlier, stepped forward. "That's not true," she said, looking at the man with wide, innocent eyes. "Ceres is nice. She's not like the others. She's our friend." The crowd fell silent. Ceres's eyes widened in surprise. Emily's words, so simple yet so sincere, seemed to reach the people. They looked at each other, unsure of what to think. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, the tension in the air began to fade. The man who had spoken earlier looked around, his expression softening. Maybe you're right," he said, his voice quieter now. "Maybe we've been too quick to judge." Ceres felt a small but hopeful spark inside her. It wasn't a full acceptance, but it was a beginning. She had taken the first step, into the heart of the city, into the hearts of the humans. And despite the fear and doubt, she had shown them a glimpse of who she truly was. As the crowd dispersed, some people gave her small nods of acknowledgement, some still uncertain, but willing to watch her prove her intentions. Ceres continued, on her path, more determined than ever to show the humans that she wasn't just a giant alien from another world. She was someone they could trust. The days that followed were a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Ceres had walked through the city and had spoken with more people, but the experience left her with mixed feelings. While some of the humans had started to warm to her, others were still filled with doubt. Every day, she felt the weight of their eyes, the silent questions, the unspoken fears. It was clear that Earth's people weren't ready to fully embrace her yet. And the truth was, Ceres wasn't sure if she was ready to trust them completely either. Her trial of trust had shown her that there was progress, but the road ahead would be long. The trust she had hoped to gain was still fragile, and there was much more to prove. Still, she couldn't shake the thought of the little girl, Emily, and how her simple belief in Ceres had changed the moment. It had reminded her that sometimes even the smallest actions could have the biggest impact. It was the morning of the second week since Ceres's trial of trust, and she found herself once again standing at the edge of the city. This time, however, she wasn't alone. Liam walked beside her, his steps slow but steady. He had been her guide, her translator, and her friend during these challenging days. But even Liam, with his calm demeanor, couldn't hide the tension in his face. He had been with her every step of the way, yet the question that loomed over them both was still unanswered. Would the humans truly accept her? As they reached the central plaza, Ceres noticed something different. A large crowd had gathered, and the atmosphere was different from before. There was no tension, no fearful glances. Instead, there was a sense of excitement, of curiosity. As she walked closer, she realized that the crowd was not there to see her as a strange alien. They were there to see her as a visitor, someone they wanted to understand. Liam noticed her surprise. "It's the city's festival today," he explained. "It's a celebration of unity and peace, and you've been invited to speak." Ceres nodded, though she could feel her nerves tightening. She had been asked to speak in front of the humans, to give them a message of peace and understanding. This would be her moment, the one she had been preparing for. But as she stood at the edge of the stage, looking out at the crowd, she couldn't help but feel a sense of doubt creeping in. What if they didn't believe her? What if they still saw her as a threat? Liam gave her a reassuring look. "You've come this far, Ceres. Just speak from the heart. They will listen." Ceres took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The crowd quieted as she stood tall, her eyes scanning the faces before her. She could feel their gaze, some curious, some wary, but most of them waiting to see what she would say. This was her moment to show them who she truly was. "I come from a distant world," Ceres began, her voice calm but strong. "I am not here to conquer or to take from you. I am here to learn, to understand, and to help if I can. I know that my people have made mistakes, and I know that trust cannot be given lightly. But I ask you to trust me, not because of who I am, but because of what I want to do, for both our worlds." The crowd listened in silence. Ceres could feel the weight of their attention, but she pressed on. "I have learned so much from you already. Your strength, your resilience, and your ability to come together in times of difficulty. These are qualities that I admire deeply. I come to offer my help, but more than that, I come to offer my friendship." There was a pause, and Ceres felt her heart race. She had spoken the truth, but would they believe her? Would they trust her words? The silence was broken when a voice from the crowd called out, "How do we know you won't just leave when you get what you want?" Ceres turned to the voice, a woman standing near the front of the crowd. The woman's face was serious, but there was no anger, only curiosity. "I understand your concern," Ceres said, her voice steady. "But I want you to know that I am not here to take anything from you. I am here to stay, to learn from you, and to grow with you. I will not leave until I've shown you that I can be trusted." For a long moment, no one spoke. But then, slowly, the crowd began to clap. It started softly, uncertainly, but soon it grew louder. People were not clapping just for her words. They were clapping for the belief that maybe, just maybe, she was telling the truth. Ceres's heart soared. She had done it. She had shown them a glimpse of who she was, and they had accepted it. It wasn't a complete acceptance, but it was a start. She had taken the first step, and the humans had taken one with her. As the applause continued, Ceres looked at Liam, who smiled and gave her a nod of approval. This was just the beginning, but it was a beginning she had fought for. And as the crowd cheered, Ceres felt a new sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could prove that the strength of her people wasn't just in their bodies, It was in their hearts, their ability to change, and their desire to make the world better for everyone. The sun had set, casting a warm golden glow over the city. The festival was winding down, but for Ceres, the day felt like a turning point. The applause she had received earlier still echoed in her mind. It wasn't the loudest applause she had ever heard, but it was the most important. For the first time since arriving on Earth, she felt a genuine connection with the people around her. The barrier of fear and doubt was slowly crumbling. As the evening shadows grew longer, Ceres walked with Liam through the now quiet streets. The excitement of the festival had faded, but the sense of possibility still lingered. They had come a long way since Ceres's first hesitant steps onto this planet. There had been moments of doubt, moments where it seemed like the humans might never trust her. But now, as they walked side by side, it felt different. Liam turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "You did well today. I think you really reached them." Ceres smiled softly, though there was a hint of exhaustion in her eyes. "I didn't do it alone, Liam. It was the people who gave me a chance. That little girl, Emily, she was the first one who believed in me. She gave me hope." Liam nodded. Sometimes it's the smallest voices that make the biggest difference. The two continued walking, the streets now empty of the earlier crowds. As they passed by a small park, Ceres noticed a group of children playing in the distance. They were laughing and running around, their carefree joy filling the air. Ceres paused for a moment, watching them. She thought back to the first time she had seen them, so full of wonder and trust. The memory made her heart ache. She had always believed in the power of strength, but now she was beginning to understand that the greatest strength was in connection, in the ability to trust and be trusted. "Do you think they'll ever fully trust me?" Ceres asked quietly, her gaze fixed on the children. Liam looked at her, his eyes kind but honest. "I think it's going to take time, Ceres. But trust isn't built in a single moment. It's built every day, in every action. You've made a start. Now you just have to keep showing them who you are." Ceres nodded, feeling the weight of his words. The journey ahead was still uncertain. There would be challenges, doubts, and moments when it seemed like all the progress she had made would be undone. But she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't give up now. She had come too far to turn back. As they continued their walk, Ceres couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought her here. She had come to Earth as a noblewoman from a distant planet, seeking to prove that her people were capable of change. But in the process, she had learned more about herself than she had ever expected. She had learned the importance of vulnerability, of opening her heart to others. She had learned that strength wasn't just about power, it was about the courage to be vulnerable, to take risks, and to trust. The sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see a man approaching them. He was tall, with dark hair and a friendly smile. He walked up to Ceres and paused, taking a deep breath. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "I was there at the festival, today. I saw what you said and I believe you. I know it's not easy for you to put yourself out there like that, but you're doing something important. You're showing us that we don't have to fear what's different, we can learn from it." Ceres blinked, surprised by the man's words. "Thank you," she replied, her voice filled with gratitude. "I just want to help. I want to show that we're not so different, that we can all be part of something greater." The man smiled warmly. "You're already helping, Ceres. Don't stop." As he turned to leave, Ceres felt a sense of warmth spread through her chest. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was no longer walking it alone. The humans had started to see her for who she truly was, not just as an alien or a noblewoman, but as someone who wanted to build a future together. Liam watched the exchange with a knowing smile. See? One person at a time, you're making a difference, Ceres. Ceres smiled back, her heart lighter than it had been in days. She had taken the first steps into the unknown, unsure of what lay ahead. But now, she felt ready for whatever challenges awaited her. She wasn't just an outsider anymore. She was part of something, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. Together, she and Liam continued down the street, ready for the next chapter in their journey. The road ahead was long, but Ceres knew that she had already found the most important thing: hope. Hope for herself, hope for the humans, and hope for a future where trust, not fear, would lead the way.